My name is John Higgins, and most recently I was Senior Vice President of Operations at Infrastrux Group, a large energy infrastructure service provider based in Seattle.
How do you define success?
I think success depends upon success is a function of meeting whatever goals you lay out for yourself. So different people have different types of goals, different needs. For some folks it's financial, for some folks it's social. And very often it's driven by the context of the particular objective that you have, right? So, in business, I most often think of it as generating a return for my shareholders, giving the folks on my team, the employees in the business, an enjoyable and constructive and gratifying place to work. And it also involves solving big problems. So, success would mean setting an objective to go off and do something, to solve a big problem, to generate a return for your shareholders, and to provide a constructive environment for people, and succeeding in those.
Where did your inspiration come from?
I can't really point to any one particular individual or event. I think it's, when I think back, it's probably a series of people and events. My undergrad is from West Point, and so there are lots of folks there who are easy, they're easy sort of inspirational figures to point to. That are, of course, are sort of parts of my being, for lack of a better word. But then, you look at more recently, I think you just look at folks around you who have done, who've taken on big challenges and succeeded, people who face much greater hurdles in their life, than I have, and are able to work through it. And so they inspire me. Folks that are just doing things that lead me to think that I'm capable of more.
How did you move from idea to something actually succeeding in the market?
I think the first step is to be brutally honest about what works and what won't work. And it's often said that a great leader is his or her own biggest critic, and that means being a big critic of your own ideas and trying to vet out things that just aren't going to work, because you've only got so many chances to move the ball forward, to try to bring something to market. And so you want to make sure that what you finally do bring to market is meaningful and worthwhile and is going to succeed. But I think that so once you're beyond that, the next paradigm that I like to live by is a poor plan well executed is better than the most detailed plan poorly executed. And so I think that it's important to think through what you think is the right way to go about doing something, and then to focus on the execution and be prepared to be nimble on your feet, as opposed to writing a 100-page business plan that sort of goes into detail over everything that at the end of the day is completely irrelevant the minute you go to market with that product or that service.
How did you organize your team?
When I think about organizing teams, I think about putting people into roles where they take advantage of their own skills and do things that interest them, and where you sort of they're predisposed to succeed. So taking somebody and putting them in a role that may, given the nature of the work or the skills that it takes to perform that particular line of work, may be at odds with the position, is probably going to end up in a disaster of some sort. So you've really got to focus on aligning the people with the objective and their skill sets. The second thing is you've got to be really careful about micromanaging. Folks sort of hire good folks and go let them do what they do, right? And as you begin to add layers to an organization, you've always got to be very sensitive to the fact that layers sort of create their own friction and create their own work, often unnecessary work. And so, when I've been involved with teams and businesses that are growing, often there is pressure to add management or add, the professionals, whatever that may mean. Got to be really careful, because very often those additions will create friction, create sort of unnecessary friction. At the end of the day, doesn't deliver an ounce of value for the customer, and that's what's most important.
If you could have, what would you have done differently?
I would have tried to get a better sense of what makes me tick early on in my career. I think that folks coming out of college, coming out of business school, are often under a great deal of pressure to do what the institution or their peers would suggest is the right thing, be it the kind of job or the location. But at the end of the day, you'll spend more time at work than you will with your family. And it's critically important that you figure out what makes you tick and what you really like to do. And you go do that, as opposed to doing what's right. And in my career, there were a number of times when I went off and I did what seemed to be the sort of acceptable next step, as opposed to saying, that's not really what interests me. I would have much preferred to, go do this. And, at the end of the day, everything comes out in the wash, and everything works out. And I would have come at things differently.
What makes a great entrepreneur?
I don't know that there's necessarily any one thing that does. I think my experience in having been involved with entrepreneurial ventures and also seeing successful entrepreneurs is that it's a mix. It's the ability to distill through ideas and settle on one that is going to fit. It's having that brutal honesty about what works and what doesn't work, and the ability to be passionate and persistent about the ones that you're convinced will, but also the ability to walk away from the ones that won't. It's the ability to convince others and to bring other people onto your team, to share that vision and to move that concept of the business forward. Entrepreneurs are, to a large degree, need to be masters of many different disciplines, and so folks that on the one hand can lead, and on the other hand can think through products and services. On the other hand, need to have an understanding of finance and sort of how all those different things come together. I've always found to be a characteristic of entrepreneurs, good entrepreneurs.
What role did education have in your success?
I can't understate the importance of education. My undergraduate degree is from West Point, and so wasn't necessarily training in business, but what it was is training in people, right? And the opportunity to lead and put into an environment where leading and working with folks is really your principal responsibility. I can't understate how important that was. And then, fast forward, for me personally, there was no better environment than business school to be exposed to the different disciplines, the different facets of business, and the nuance that occurs in running a business when all of those converge. So it provided me a base, a platform that was hugely important. I'd add a second part to that, though. While not education per se, one of the most valuable elements of being in school, whether it be undergraduate or graduate, is the depth of relationship that you build with other folks who have other interests. And they're people you learn from, people who you'll argue with, you'll disagree with, they'll contribute to your education. But then as you leave school and enter the business world, become folks that form the basis of your network. and folks that you'll know and rely on throughout the course of your career. That's very, very important.
What's the most important question we did not ask you in your answer?
I don't know that it's necessarily a question, but it's hard to, in the world of entrepreneurialism, it's hard to separate out the financial reward from or you need to separate out the financial reward from all the rewards that come with growing a company. And folks sort of, in many cases, are drawn to it because they think there's some sort of pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. In the vast majority of cases, there isn't. And in the vast majority of cases, really what's there is a lot of hard work and repeated efforts to create and grow an enterprise that the odds are more often than not will fail. And so I think that entrepreneurs have to be realistic about why they're doing what they're doing, that it is a passion, that it is something that they feel very strongly about, and not driven solely by a desire to make an enormous amount of money. Because that you will habitually disappoint yourself if that's the sole objective you have in starting a venture.